In May of 2024, I stood before a small, skeptical audience and made a series of claims that many dismissed as geopolitical fantasy. I stated that the return of Donald Trump was not just a political possibility, but a systemic necessity for the American empire. I further predicted that his first major act of the second term would be the initiation of a high-stakes military confrontation with Iran. At the time, the mainstream media was focused on domestic polling and minor scandals. They missed the structural signals. They missed the underlying shifts in the global tectonic plates of power. Today, those predictions are no longer theory. They are headlines. They are the reality we wake up to every morning. But while the world watches the explosions in the Middle East, they are missing the most critical layer of this operation. The war you see on television is a distraction. It is a cinematic production designed to keep your eyes on the battlefield while the real heist takes place in the global financial markets. The real endgame has nothing to do with nuclear centrifuges, regional democracy, or the liberation of people. It is a desperate final maneuver to save a dying financial system that has reached its mathematical limit. I have analyzed the data, and the framework of predictive history reveals a truth so unsettling that no major network will touch it. Listen closely, because what I am about to show you is the blueprint for the next decade of global collapse and the silent war for the future of your money. To the casual observer, the crisis in 2024 and 2025 appears to be a clash of civilizations, a battle between Western values and Eastern revisionism. This is the narrative sold to the public to ensure emotional buy-in, to make you feel that your security is at stake. But in the realm of predictive history, we do not deal in emotions. We do not deal in the rhetoric of politicians. We deal in imperatives. We deal in the cold, hard logic of survival. The United States is currently facing a sovereign debt crisis that is mathematically inescapable. With a national debt exceeding $35 trillion and interest payments now surpassing the entire defense budget, the American empire is at a breaking point. It is a house of cards waiting for a gust of wind. When an empire can no longer pay its bills through productivity, when its factories are silent and its innovation is stagnant, it must do so through exorbitant privilege. This is the ability to force the rest of the world to use its currency, to export its inflation to every corner of the globe. The current war is not about Iran's regime. It is about the petrodollar. If the world stops needing dollars to buy oil, the American economy collapses overnight. Your savings, your pension, the very value of the currency in your pocket, all of it depends on a global requirement that oil be traded in green paper. This is the crisis. The war is not the problem. The war is the solution being implemented by the elite to reset the clock. But why Iran? And why now? The answer lies in a layer of reality that the mainstream media is designed to ignore. Why is the mainstream media missing the real story? It isn't always a conspiracy of silence. Often, it is a lack of the correct analytical lens. They are trained to look at proximate causes: a drone strike here, a provocative speech there, a naval skirmish in the Persian Gulf. They ignore the ultimate causes. They ignore the deep-seated economic shifts that dictate military action. The ultimate cause of this conflict is the Shanghai Gold Exchange and the rise of the petro-yuan. For the first time since 1971, when Nixon severed the dollar's link to gold, there is a viable liquid alternative to the dollar for global energy settlements. China has been quietly building what I call the gold corridor. They have realized that the US dollar is no longer a neutral medium of exchange, but a weaponized liability. By moving their oil purchases to the yuan and backing that yuan with physical gold in Shanghai, they are effectively disarming the American empire. The mainstream media talks about human rights in Tehran, but they never mention that Iran is the linchpin of China's energy security and the primary laboratory for this new gold-backed system. If you control Iran, or if you simply ensure that Iran cannot sell oil in anything but dollars, you preserve the empire for another decade. This is the secret briefing intensity I want you to feel. The people making these decisions in the windowless rooms of Washington and Beijing aren't thinking about peace. They are thinking about the survival of their respective ledgers. Let us apply the framework. In game theory, we look at zero-sum games. The current situation is a classic example. For the US to maintain its standard of living, China must fail to internationalize its currency. The strategy being deployed is what I call the resource bottleneck. It is not enough to sanction China. You must make the resources they need. Oil, lithium, silver, and semiconductors unobtainable through any means other than the US financial system. You must create a world where there is no off-ramp from the dollar. Look at the strategic synchronicity of the last 24 months. While the US escalates with Iran, it has simultaneously moved to secure the largest oil reserves in the world in Venezuela. This is not a coincidence. This is a pincer movement. By destabilizing the Middle East, which is China's primary source of energy, the US forces China to look toward the Western Hemisphere for its survival. And in the Western Hemisphere, the US Navy and the US Treasury dictate the terms. You buy in dollars, or you don't buy at all. You follow our rules, or your economy goes dark. This is the grand bargain that Trump intends to present to Beijing in 2026. It is a mafia-style offer. We will give you the resources you need to survive. We will keep the lights on in Shanghai and Shenzhen. But you must abandon the yuan. You must stop buying gold. And you must return to the dollar. It is a move of pure economic imperative. But game theory also tells us that every move has a counter move. Every action has a reaction that the original actor often fails to anticipate. And this is where the prediction becomes truly dark. What happens next? The mainstream analysts, the retired generals on cable news, they predict a quick victory or a regime change in Tehran that will usher in a new era of stability. My framework reveals a different outcome entirely. The US will likely succeed in the military theater. Its technological and kinetic superiority is still unmatched. But it will lose the economic war. This is the paradox of force. By weaponizing the dollar so aggressively, by using it as a tool of total war, the US is forcing the rest of the world into a survivalist financial stance. It is teaching its enemies and even its allies that the dollar is a risk they can no longer afford to take. I predict that by 2027, we will see the total fragmentation of the global financial system. The grand bargain with China will fail because the trust is gone, and once trust is destroyed in a fiat currency system, it cannot be rebuilt with bombs. Instead of returning to the dollar, China, Russia, and the BRICS plus nations will launch a gold-backed settlement unit. This won't just be another currency you can trade on an app. It will be a closed-loop system that bypasses Western banks, the SWIFT system, and the US Treasury entirely. It will be a digital iron curtain, but this time, the economic power will be on the other side. The US dollar will experience what economists call a sudden stop, a moment where its value drops not by percentages over years, but by orders of magnitude over weeks. The exorbitant privilege will vanish. Domestic inflation in the US will reach levels not seen since the 1930s, as the trillions of dollars held overseas come rushing back home, chasing a dwindling supply of goods. The war with Iran will be remembered not as a triumph of democracy or a masterstroke of strategy, but as the final overextension of an empire that forgot that wealth is built on trust and productivity, not just tomahawk missiles and debt. The endgame is the end of the American century as we know it, and the beginning of a chaotic, multipolar struggle for what remains. Think about the implications for your own life. The mainstream media wants you to focus on the politics of the day, the latest tweet, the latest scandal. They want you to stay in a state of perpetual distraction. But the structural signals are screaming. We are seeing the largest movement of physical gold in history from the West to the East. We are seeing nations that were once staunch US allies beginning to settle trade in local currencies. These are not random events. They are the symptoms of a system in its final stages of collapse. I have laid out the framework. I have shown you the hidden layers that the experts refuse to discuss. The data is clear for those who have the courage to look beyond the headlines. The 2024 war was never about security. It was about the survival of a ledger. It was about who gets to print the money and who has to work for it. We are entering an era of predictive history, where the old rules no longer apply, and the maps we've used for the last 50 years are being burned. The question is no longer what the government will do, but what you will do to protect yourself and your family. When the dollar loses its status as the world's reserve currency, where will your wealth be? How will you navigate a world where the financial system is fractured and the old certainties are gone? I have analyzed these scenarios in my private briefings, and I will continue to share the signals as they emerge from the noise. If you want to understand the future before it happens, if you want to be prepared while others are panicked, then you must join the community of those who look beneath the surface. The mainstream media will give you the what, the noise and the fire. I will give you the why, the logic and the path forward. The game is far from over, but for the first time, you can see the board.